Folks, we do have a few seats up front. As I see people are still making their way in. See about 3 open seats here. Oh, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone, and good Yontif. Thank you all for being here. It is my honor to first introduce the Rabbi James A. Wax Institute for Social Justice, who is presenting our wonderful speaker for today. The Wax Institute seeks to move from knowledge to understanding to action through special speakers and panel discussions that will deepen our understanding and awareness of issues that continue to plague our community, both locally and nationally. The Institute hopes to provide resources for all of us to find pathways of personal involvement so that we can continue to be a beacon of hope in our Memphis community and beyond. In doing so, we carry forward Rabbi Wax's legacy of bringing the light of Judaism and the values of equality and justice into the world. As he once wrote, "Religion confined to sanctuary walls, religion on a part-time basis can do little. But religion whose voice is heard everywhere and whose influence is constantly felt will steer mankind from confusion to certainty, from strife to security." Before I pass it over to our wonderful senior rabbi, who will introduce our speaker, who, in complete honesty, needs no introduction, I want to make a quick note about this upcoming spring. I want to invite all of you here, those who may be streaming, joining online, to join us on April 22nd, 2026 for the Wax Institute's next event in partnership with Facing History and Ourselves. It will be an evening of song, discussion, and meaningful conversation that highlights the story of the Scottsboro trials of 1931, and specifically how the Jewish community responded to this gross miscarriage of justice 95 years ago. The lessons from this moment in history still echo today, and I hope you'll mark your calendars and plan to join us here at Temple. As I said, our speaker today needs no introduction, and before passing it over to Rabbi Greenstein, I want to offer a few words about Rabbi Danziger. I will simply share that I have personally gained so much from Rabbi D's warmth, wisdom, and kindness in my 2 years here in Memphis. He and Jeannie continue to serve as beacons of light and decency here in Memphis, or I guess that is when they're not making sacred pilgrimage along I-40 to our sister congregation and my home synagogue, the Temple in Nashville, Tennessee. And his profound Torah continues to resonate deeply in this community. I will say, while it is often my practice to wear a talit, a prayer shawl, throughout the day of Yom Kippur, as Rabbi Greenstein shares with us, it is one long service. You will notice we did not conclude our service just 30 minutes ago or so. I wanted to especially wear it to introduce Rabbi Danziger, since I know it is him we have to thank that we are wearing things like kippot and talitot here at Temple Israel. So with that, I'll pass it over to my rabbi, my teacher, my friend, Rabbi Micah Greenstein.
Thank you, Rabbi. Where are Jeannie and Lois? We have reserved seats for you up front, unobstructed view. The First Lady of Temple, come sit down here by him. Down here. Jeannie? Oh, you don't know? What Jeannie says goes. But we have seats for you and Lois. So, Rabbi Levy, I don't know what the word was among fifth-year rabbinic students when you or Rabbi Sternberg were about to be ordained, but in contemplating where to serve as an assistant rabbi in my class of 40, when I was completing rabbinical school, the joke was the three most important criteria were not location, 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 but senior rabbi, senior rabbi, senior rabbi. And that's why accepting Rabbi Danziger's call to serve alongside him in 1991 when we weren't wearing taluses. Our 34-year relationship is not only about my abiding respect for Harry's wisdom and rabbinate, but also my gratitude for our friendship and love, as Rabbi Levy has already gleaned, love for Harry's Menschlichkeit. The Wax Institute will continue to offer programs over the course of the year, as Rabbi Levy, who leads it on our clergy team, shared. But this is why this introduction is important. There's only one individual for everyone watching, streaming, and in this Danziger chapel. There's only one individual who actually served closely with Rabbi Wax as a rabbi in this space on this holiest day of the year. And every week for years and years, 5 months ago, another person in the front row was sharing with me a sermon. He said, Rabbi Greenstein, this sermon is amazing. It's not yours. I said, I have to read it. And he said, you probably have it. When Rabbi Danziger became our emeritus, after 36 years in the rabbinate, some of you may remember a booklet of sermons. And so I read it, and it shook me because although it was dated 1988, it could have been delivered in 2025. I don't want to say any more than thank you, thank you, thank you to our cherished emeritus, Rabbi Harry Danziger, not only for that sermon and the countless others you gave for 36 years and continue to give. Come back for Torah study with Rabbi Danziger any Saturday. Thank you to Rabbi Harry K. Danziger, far more for all that you mean to us as a temple family every day. Rabbi Harry and the First Lady of Temple, Jeannie, Michael and Lindsay in Nashville. Now when you say, it's kind of like, hey, Jim, and 3 people turn around, or Mike. Now it's Rabbi Danziger. It could be one of those 3. But how fortunate we are to have Rabbi Harry and Jeannie back home in Memphis for Yom Kippur. I know this normally happens at the end of a talk, but I would please ask you to show your gratitude and love for the rabbi, teacher, counselor, friend, yes, who needs no introduction, but for his ongoing and indelible impact on Temple Israel, on all of our lives and so many of you watching, Rabbi Harry Danziger.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the applause. 36 years, I doubt that anyone ever applauded a sermon. And for sure not before it was given. That is, if you heard Rabbi Sternberg's wonderful sermon this morning, you can think through whether that applause that you just gave me was an act of optimism or hope. So anyhow, my thanks to Rabbi Greenstein for the invitation and for the beautiful introduction. Likewise, Rabbi Levy. I want you to know that one of the proudest moments I had this morning was in Rabbi Greenstein's noting that Nick Ringel of blessed memory and I were the ones who brought him here. And I have nothing to repent for in that. A word about Rabbi Wax, this institute. Some of you know that I carry with me a stopwatch. Others of you know it means nothing when I put it here. But I want to say a word about Rabbi Wax, with whom I served for 9 years as assistant, associate, and for a couple of years co-rabbi. The people who remember him, and that is a diminishing number, obviously, remember most of all the national televised moment when he confronted the mayor of Memphis and said, there are laws higher than the state of Tennessee. I was in the room. I am, by now, according to what we can tell, the last surviving clergy person who was in the march from St. Mary's Cathedral to the mayor's office that April morning. The last two that we know of died when Father Nick Viren of the Greek Orthodox Church died, and Dr. James Lawson, one of Dr. King's ideologues in nonviolence. So I have memories of that, but I want you to know a different thing about Rabbi Wax, and then I will launch into what I was invited for. More important than his confronting the mayor in that dramatic moment, I think was, and I know was in his mind, that this wasn't ultimately what you wanted. He was disappointed, because I remember his coming in tired some mornings in the days before the assassination, when he was up late in the night with other clergy, mediating the strike in the hope of ending the unrest in Memphis. And for him, the idea of how you solve problems was that the leaders in good faith got together and negotiated a solution. It was a defeat, not a victory, to be put in the position of having to confront the popular mayor of Memphis in the way that he did, but it was the call of the prophets that led him to do it. So we honor his memory, the nationally televised, but more so the come let us reason together. The sermon I gave in 1988. I was born a few days after Kristallnacht in 1938, so it's always been meaningful to me. The sermon that I gave, which I will share with you and then have a few comments thereafter for now, the sermon that I gave presupposed that we Jews were solidly anchored with our civil liberties much intact. I even said, one of my continuing concerns has been that as we Jews become haves, politically, socially, and materially, we not lose sight of others still on lower rungs of the ladder. Well, I would amend that to say, nobody is a have today in the area of civil liberties, and so it's directed not just to Jews to stand up for others, but for everyone to stand up for everyone. And now, the sermon. Sermon was given on November 5th. 3 days later, George H.W. Bush, remember him, was elected president of the United States, carrying 40 states. This was Saturday morning, as far as I can tell, and here's what I said. This Wednesday night, November 9th, will be, as most of you know, the 50th anniversary of Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, in Germany and in Austria. On that night in 1938, mobs led by the unofficial gangsters of the Third Reich burned over 200 synagogues, destroyed over 700 Jewish shops, and looted an additional 7,500 stores. It was called the Night of Broken Glass because of the fragments of glass from homes, shops, and synagogues that littered the streets of Germany and Austria. Today, I want to speak on just one aspect of the Night of Broken Glass, November 9th, 1938. That is the fact that it happened not to Jews in Eastern Europe, who were not citizens of the lands in which they lived, not to Jews who had never known the protection of law, not to Jews who had no rights of citizenship, not to Jews who had never thought of themselves as part and parcel of their nation, but to the Jews of Germany and Austria. The Jews of Germany were established in society, spoke the language of the land, had been honored for their service in World War I, had served in high positions in the government. Many thought of themselves as Germans except for religion. They were, they believed, secure as citizens of the nation, Jews who were truly German, in many cases more German than Jewish. The prelude to Kristallnacht was the Nuremberg laws of 3 years before. In 1935, Jews had already been barred from government employment, from the arts and the professions. Now they were barred from manual crafts. Now they were deprived of German citizenship. They were called Staatsangehörige, subjects of the state. Marriage or any other relations between Jews and Aryans became punishable by prison. Jews could not employ domestic female help below the age of 45, a cruel suggestion that Jews were lecherous toward German women. Jews, some of them who had served in World War I, were forbidden to fly the German national flag, and the flag itself was changed to the swastika. In 2 years, from Hitler's emergence as Chancellor in 1933 to 1935, the Jews found themselves stripped of the rights of German citizenship. 3 years later, they discovered that their property and their lives were no longer protected. By 7 years later, there was extermination on a mass scale. When I taught at Rhodes, the Judaism course that I inherited from Rabbi Wax, when I taught at Rhodes, I taught the Holocaust in 3 simple segments. You can't live here as a citizen. You can't live here. You finish it. What is the next one? You can't live. We American Jews, no matter Orthodox, conservative, or Reform, no matter how observant or non-observant, how Jewish or un-Jewish we appear, are more like the Jews of Germany than we are the millions of Jews who would die in the next 7 years from countries like Romania and Hungary, Poland and Russia and Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia. We live under the often taken for granted protection of citizenship, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Even in those times when Jews might have been unpopular, as we were to large numbers of Americans in the years before World War II, we have been able to count on the American principle that our nation, our laws, do not know group from group, Jew from Christian, Republican from Democrat, liberal from conservative, more recently, black from white. And so the Jews of Germany believed. Am I trying to say that we should be afraid that such things will happen here? No. I was speaking in 1988, remember. Am I telling a horror story for the future? No, I hope. I am pointing out that there is no such thing as permanence when it comes to laws and principles. Civil liberties are only as strong as the people who support them, the people who support them even when they disagree with them. Witness the internment of Japanese Americans at the outset of World War II. No one believed in summarily taking away the rights of citizens. They just did it in panic, in fear, in anger, and in an insufficient commitment to civil liberties for all citizens, no matter the emergency, the panic, the anger, or the fear. That is why we Jews ought to know the lesson better than most, ought to understand that our protection, our security, like that of any other group that one day may be under attack, comes not from being always well-liked. No one can manage that. Not from being popular, not from always agreeing with the mainstream, whether in religion, social issues, or politics. Our security and everyone's security come from the degree to which America protects its citizens and affirms their rights, no matter how repugnant their views or how unpopular their beliefs. Whether MAGA or Antifa, whether Democrat or Republican, everyone has a stake in civil liberties for everyone. A Jew who is not a civil libertarian, in the finest sense of that term, refuses to understand his own history and his own destiny. This is no plea for the ACLU or any other organization, but it is an urgent reminder, 1988, it is an urgent reminder that today's haves can be tomorrow's have-nots, that rights accorded anyone because his views are acceptable to the majority can be quickly withdrawn when his views become unpopular. The only protection for any is a protection for all. A minority insecure about its own status, inwardly worried about its own place at the center of things, may easily be seduced to outshout the bigots, to prove its loyalty. Such a minority may be seduced into joining the outcry against others whose views are objectionable or marginal or unpopular, but that minority does so at its peril, peril to its rights, certainly peril to its integrity and self-respect. Kristallnacht reminds us of those who suffered, of those who died, and we memorialize them in many ways. But looking not to the past but to the future, Kristallnacht calls on us to be champions of the rights of all citizens. We know too well that a nation which tramples the rights of one group may trample the rights of any group. Let me close with an example from a much more recent time, 1981 I'm speaking. It was the time of the riots in American cities following the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Many of us remember the curfews which were imposed in Memphis after the assassination, and again on the anniversary of the assassination a year later in April of 1969. On that day in April, I had a wedding scheduled. It was a Saturday, so the wedding was at night because I don't do weddings on Shabbos afternoon. But there was a curfew. Now, we all knew that the curfew wasn't about white Jews in East Memphis. We all knew that we could have a wedding that night and nothing would happen except a wedding that night. But we agreed that we would have the wedding before sunset because we would abide by the curfew. What confirmed my judgment and shaped part of my life was that later, in talking to a black high school principal, a man whose education and achievement made him a leader in Memphis, he said to me, "Rabbi," regarding the curfew, he said, "Rabbi, to you, I'm Dr. So-and-so with degrees from such and such colleges. But on the streets at curfew, I'm just another N-word." That told me all I needed to know about civil liberties, citizenship rights for all groups or none. Every Jew must be a civil libertarian in enlightened self-interest and because it is the right thing. Now, I've added a little piece of this joint sermon, Danziger 88, Danziger 25. There was a president of the United States who wrote a letter to the Jews of Newport, George Washington. That letter is a sacred document. And he wrote in that letter to the Jews of Newport, Rhode Island, these words: "It is no more that toleration is spoken of, as if it was by the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support." Let me unpack that 18th century language. It says, don't let anybody ever tell you that you got your rights of citizenship because they gave them to you. You got it because you're in this country, you were born here, you were naturalized, or you're just here. Those who live under its protection. And so don't ever let anybody tell you that you're a second-class citizen. And don't let anybody tell you that you've been given rights by some group, and so they can be taken away by some group. And that's what the first president was saying. So the lesson of the Holocaust, Kristallnacht, and a lesson that continues even in the words of Washington and the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, is that none of this is permanent. None of this is guaranteed without our doing something. And so the lesson that I draw is protect civil liberties for everyone as though your life depended on it, because it might. Shana Tova.
Questions? Please be seated for questions, but history was made, applause, before and after a sermon. That's never happened. But we don't begin the Israel hour till 1:30. We want to adjourn at 1:20. And Rabbi Danziger has graciously agreed to answer any questions you may have. Please, anyone? Ricky, if you could speak up.
You read that letter from Washington. It was kind of hypocritical with the own slave. As did Jefferson, as did Madison.
Yeah,
Can you repeat it for those streaming?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the statement is, it was a statement, but appropriate statement to comment on. By the way, Dennis Prager, whom I used to be a fan of, but Dennis used to end his speeches with, "And now we'll have time for questions, comments, and short speeches." But this was not. Ricky said George Washington was rather hypocritical to cite Washington, who held slaves. Slaves were real people. They lived there, and yet they had no rights. I was really citing the letter and not the man. I was also citing the office. I don't know when we finally had, well, John Adams, I guess, didn't hold slaves. He may have benefited from the profits there. But a more focused answer is Washington said something that was highly meaningful. He may not have totally obeyed it himself, but I'm a believer in a principle that applies here too. One thing about being a hypocrite, The only way to be a hypocrite is to have standards. If you have no standards, you can't be a hypocrite. So Washington had standards, and he may not have lived up to them, but the words that he sent were sacred to the Jews of America, not necessarily his example. I hope that was a fair statement, Ricky.
You also gave a sermon that impacted me, and I still draw from, on meliorism. Can you comment on that? Since the Torah, Ricky, also, I was with Rabbi Danziger and someone said, but there's slavery in the Torah. But then, Rabbi Danziger, I won't speak for you.
No, I appreciate you mentioning meliorism. First of all, you say something like meliorism, and it justifies all that money my parents spent on the college education. Somebody once said that being a rabbi entitles you to use words like countenance and bequeath. Nobody else ever uses them. But what was the question? Oh, meliorism. Yeah, so I believe we Jews are meliorists. Meliorists meaning we can make things better, but they're never going to be perfect. One of the things we Jews learned the hard way, in fact, in 1648, which all of you will remember, one of the things we learned was not to predict when the Messiah was going to come. There was a prediction in 1648 the Messiah was going to come. Instead, there was a revolt in Eastern Europe and the slaughtering of many Jews. Meliorism is we can make it better. We can't make it perfect. That was in the sermon today, last night, an ongoing theme. Yeah. If perfection, and by the way, that's one of my prides in being a Reformed Jew. I often said that my Orthodox colleagues had to start from the viewpoint of 100% and see where we fall short. In terms of Jewish tradition, in many cases, as Reformed Judaism was transformed in these last 50, 60 years, the question was, where do we start, and do we rise above it? Do we have more adoption of tradition, et cetera? Meliorism, I think, is what we Jews do.
Other questions? We have a microphone now. Please. Say, can you hear? This is the 2:30 hour. If you're not going to the music, Dr. Levy.
Rabbi, would you give a comment on how this fits into my favorite sermon of yours, the first sermon of yours, the New World Symphony?
You sent me that recently, and that was my first sermon, High Holy Day sermon, New World Symphony, and I don't remember much about it. And I read it again after you were kind enough, Dr. Levy, was kind enough to send it to me. Oh, it was about harmony. Yeah, the symphony as opposed to a concerto or a recital. That's the continuing theme in Reformed Judaism, and a continuing tension in Judaism. There's a tension in Judaism between particularism, meaning it's about us, and universalism, which means it's about us. The overwhelming dominant theme at certain times is universalism, but then we run into an October 7th or things like that. So let me give one really solid example which will disturb some of you. When you're a particularist, you are concerned about what's happening to you, what's being said about you, what's being done to you. So it takes a particular kind of universalism to be able to say, boy, I hate it when a college student lifts a banner that says Free Palestine, but I also don't think in my name you need to take away all the grants from that university. That's universalism and particularism. And some people will say, oh, Rabbi, you are so wrong. And they have a right to say, Rabbi, you're wrong. And I have a right to say, well, that's how I see it. I had a member of my family to whom I had taught the lesson somebody taught me about when you come to a loggerheads, you simply say, well, you may be right. So I said to the member of my family, so you may be right. And he smiled and he said, and you may be right. But I think you're wrong.
I have a question about something that is really bothering my spirit right now, and I think a lot of people's, that I think is one of the most egregious violations of civil liberties right now, which is immigration and what's happening to many undocumented immigrants whose lives are being uprooted and destroyed. And I'm wondering, and I have friends that are afraid to take their children to school right now because of ICE's activities. We know that the Civil Guard is here in Memphis right now, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are around that specifically, on this community of people whose lives are just, who are working and who are living their lives and who are living in fear right now. What are your thoughts? What can we do about that? How can we help?
Thank you. Yeah. My overwhelming thought is, first of all, that stopping people because of what they look like or the language that they're speaking is, to me, ipso facto a violation. Any kind of profiling. Yes, we know that obviously the large proportion of immigrants who may be undocumented come from lands where they speak Spanish. I mean, no secret there. But speaking Spanish is not cause for picking someone up, et cetera, et cetera. What we can do about it, I don't know much about what we can do about it. I think we can try and hold the government to the laws that already should control them. The question here is whether the courts can enforce the laws on the government itself, and that seems to me where the crux of it lies. I don't know how much individual citizens can do, giving aid, giving help, giving support to people who are in danger or perceive themselves in danger, and particularly those who are in danger and have no reason to be in danger. To be helpful to them. I'm stuck for an answer, as I think in this day and age, too often we are stuck for an answer. But certainly the idea of non-profiling and of limiting the degree to which we, the non-profiling, it seems to me is one of the important things, and one of the things that courts can adjudicate if they then have the power, or if the administration will say, if that's the law, that's what we'll do. It wasn't a very good answer. It's not a very good situation. It's a very good question.
We have time. 6 hours till we eat, if anyone's counting.
That's discouraging. Some of us go by Greenwich Mean Time.
Thank you for that sermon, Rabbi. Just to play off that young lady's question, I taught ROTC here in Memphis for 7 years. The program I had over those 7 years went to be majority Hispanic students, majority illegal alien students, and they were basically some of the finest students I ever had. I still have a lot of those students that today stay in touch with me, check on me, want to know how I'm doing, say they'll do anything that I need. And these are people that are on the DACA program now. And like the young lady pointed out, they're working, they're paying taxes. And I can tell you that they are as American as me and you are. The only difference between them. The only difference between them and us is they speak Spanish when they go home. That's the only difference. Some of my students are, and they're now in their 20s, almost 30 years old. They've enjoyed this country. They know this country's traditions, customs, culture. Not Mexico or Honduras or anywhere else they come from. They don't know those. Many of them came as young as 6 months old to 2 months old to 3 months old. One of my students that is like an adopted daughter. She's on the DACA program, illegal. She came here when she was in the 2nd grade, and her story will break your heart. She spoke no English, would have to go home after school and translate everything from school into Spanish so she could understand it until she got qualified enough in English to understand everything. Just a fine young lady. But I divert. I wanted you to know those stories because these people that, like she pointed out, these people are fine people. They are working hard. They're not criminals. They're not causing pain. They simply want the same thing that the Western world wants, a better life for their child. And that's why they were brought here, because their parents wanted a better life. You know, if you ever want to question about why an illegal alien here, question why a woman would put a baby in her arms and walk to the U.S. from El Salvador. You know, most of us would not make that decision. But my question for you is I'm a kind of a history buff. And what disturbs me that is going on today with our government, there's a whole lot of parallels that I see to Germany in the 30s. And I just, you're obviously know your history, so I just wondered what your thoughts were on the correlation between now and then.
I appreciate first of all, I appreciate what you said about those who are undocumented but who are in every other way American, contributing Americans. I couldn't agree more. If ICE had been around in the early 1900s, and if there had been a nativist move as there was later in the 1900s, it's likely that I wouldn't be here because my family came over from Lithuania on both sides. And if there had been a poll of resident Americans then, they probably would have said, let the Eastern Europeans stay out. As for parallels, too close for comfort. Too close for comfort, I think, quite simply because we've relied for years on the assumption that we all commit to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. It may be that the courts will rule one way one generation and another generation, but we still relied on courts. We relied on the legislature. We relied on checks and balances. And today, the danger seems to me, is the question of whether might, or the ability to, yes, might supersedes right. We've had a strong set of standards in our country as to what was right, and they're the right set, and we need to abide by them.
Just one more, and I'm going to have the last word. I just want to tell everyone where we're going after this question. In this space, everyone outside the space, many of you here have asked about, what about Israel? There will be a program on Israel with another hidden gem in Memphis, Professor Beverly from University of Memphis, if you don't know her. That will take place with Rabbi Sternberg right here. Donald, if you will please ask your question.
What does it make you personally feel that on this Yom Kippur, we're worshiping under massive armed guards outside to protect us in East Memphis?
Yeah, well, you heard the question. It makes me feel about the same as if, God forbid, the doctor says you need this surgery because of a condition in which you find yourself. And you say to yourself, I don't really want that surgery. And the doctor says, you should have the surgery. It'll keep you alive. If that's what it takes. Now, how do I feel about a world in which we need it? The fact is that on the 50th anniversary of Kristallnacht, when we observed it here, we had a police presence at that time because there was chatter, what the FBI picked up as unspecified chatter about attacks on synagogues and other Jewish institutions. So it's not new, but this is more elaborate, and we live in, frankly, a different world. And I think it's a case of Jewish pragmatism. You do what you have to do to survive.
This is such a rare hour to have, and there's not a pin drop, Rabbi. I think this is what Yom Kippur is supposed to be, wrestling with the questions you've raised. We have time for another question. It's okay. We could still leave and come back in by 1:30. Other questions on your minds? Please. Is that Sandy?
Rabbi Danziger, what do we do? People are screaming. I'm loud, you know that. Rabbi Danziger, what can we do about the situation?
Which situation do you want to deal with?
Well, I just want to clarify that when I couldn't fall asleep on the plane reading his 1988 sermon, let's remember he's drawn the parallels. He was not invited to be the prophet or son of a prophet. But I just want to clarify that when you read the original sermon, the context was it not you were born, you said it in passing. So
Yeah.
If you want to solve the world's problems, go ahead.
I think probably one of the things you do is support those institutions and organizations that support the values that we share. When I say share, there is some level of values that Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, Jews, Gentiles, Christians, Muslims, there's some level of values that we share if we could find it. Otherwise, supporting those groups, political, social, whatever they may be. I said I wasn't giving a pitch for the ACLU, but it's a perfect example. People who finance and offer the person power and the expertise to try to make sure that the standards which we have to live by are enforced. And if I could tell you the avenues, I would, but I don't know all the avenues. But that's what we depend on. And not just Jews depend on. There's a reading in the prayer book, page 231. It's on the left-hand side. It's in the gray, whatever, mat. It's by Rabbi Arthur Kurtzer. It's about Zionism, Israel, etc. At the very end of it, it talks about in a place where there are no laws, society cannot exist, and we Jews are often among the first to suffer. Jews have a stake in an orderly, non-chaotic, law-abiding government and society. But with one little footnote, and then I won't take more time. Hitler was elected by a legal election. Down the line, there were passes at making sure everything was legal. And so we have to be standards-oriented, not just legal-oriented. But ultimately, every Jew and everybody has a stake in the idea of a society that is governed by law. The Talmud says, pray for the welfare of the government, for if not for fear of the government, people would devour each other like fish, or something to that extent. Things haven't changed in the last 1,500 years. Thank you to Rabbi Greenstein for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share with you, to share the words from the past, and to share our common concerns, because that's what, I got a feeling that that's what we go away with, our common concerns that we ought to be able to talk about.
I dare say, Rabbi, you not only make us all proud, but you make Rabbi Wax proud, what you've done in your own legacy here. So I'm going to ask everyone in a minute to please rise in the Danziger Chapel and come back for Israel at 1:30. But let's hear it for Rabbi Danziger and the Rabbi Wax Institute. Please rise.
Thank you.